Assessors must be able to assess training or learning delivery. This lesson provides guidance to assessors about assessing learning delivery and how to prepare for practical training sessions with small groups. You'll also receive some practical advice about delivery. Assessment of learning delivery is a quality assurance process, and in order for the learning delivery to reflect quality at the end, we must have quality in every stage of learning delivery. When assessing training, the assessor is checking that the training is valid. That means the assessor must review the training and determine if it actually provides the job-critical knowledge, skills, and abilities required for proficient job performance. Assessment is the process of collecting evidence and making judgments on whether competency has been achieved. The purpose of assessment is to confirm that an individual can perform to the standard expected in the workplace as expressed in the relevant industry competency standards. The questions considered by the assessor when assessing training should include: does the training prepare the candidate for the realistic working conditions that adequately assess the candidate's abilities to perform his or her duties on the job? Was the candidate required to demonstrate the skills and knowledge that are identified in the assessment as critical to proficiency? Was the candidate required to rely on his or her own skills and knowledge? Always assess the delivery of learning to ensure it is suitable for the level of the vocational qualification. SSNT thinks the goal of the trainer is to engage the student with the learning material. It is very easy for the instructor to be talking too much. In fact, he can end up being the only person talking. That is called a lecture. Engaged students react to the material, ask questions, share experiences, and talk about the subject among themselves. Effective learning delivery requires thought and preparation. In preparation, trainers have to consider the size of the group and what previous or existing knowledge is within the group. Find out about potential language and culture issues. Learning delivery must be structured to build knowledge and skills systematically, and to be engaging for students. A variety of activities can be used to produce student engagement. Keep lectures very short. Discussion is a good way of getting trainees to understand the reasons for doing things in a particular way and to think about different situations. Practical demonstrations can be performed. Videos can be used to demonstrate things not possible in the classroom or workshop. Trainers can use the experience of group members to increase engagement by getting experienced members to respond to the questions of their peers, where possible. Timings are very important. Timings are very important. Don't try to squeeze too much into the time available. It is better to achieve a modest objective than fail to meet an over-optimistic one. Trainers should think about what they want the trainees to ask and prompt them with questions of your own, especially about practical situations. Preparing for questions is partly to avoid being caught out with something you don't know. Get out of training rooms as much as possible, and try to expose students to the working environment often. Try to avoid classrooms that look like a courtroom. Use round-table seating arrangements. We also suggest that trainers speak from either side of the room during presentations, to be heard and watch the students. And that leaves the learning material in front of them to focus on. To recap preparation, we must define the objective achievable in the available time. Choose the location and setting. Consider the group demographic. Structure the training. Choose the activities. Work out the timings. Prepare for group questions. Prepare simple own notes. Keep your own notes brief to avoid having to read them. Like everyone else, instructors don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Go for student engagement from the start. Objective is always about what the learner will be able to do as a result of being coached, not about what the coach will do during the session. Defining objectives helps measure success. Choose your language carefully. You are not the star, you are the coach. Treat your students as if you're coaching Usain Bolt. None of Bolt's coaches could perform better than him, not even on Usain's worst day. The coach is there to observe and advise. You can state the objective together with the roles and responsibilities. For example, state the trainer's role. My objective is to teach this group the correct type of extinguisher to use on different kinds of fire. And state the group's role. As a result of this training, each person in the group will be able to select the correct type of extinguisher to use on different kinds of fire. Be fully aware that literacy and numeracy skills alone do not define intelligence. Ask learners to describe their prior knowledge and experience at the start. You might discover that you have some learning resources among them. For example, a student could have experience in an area and be able to provide more valuable details than in your prepared material. The learner will be bored if the coaching is pitched too simply or confused if it is pitched too detailed. Some learners, through culture or conditioning, take a while to grasp the difference between learner-centered coaching and instructor-centered teaching. Take time to encourage and explain. We now have some information about the prior knowledge in the group, and we have explained the learning objective of the session. Next, a breakdown of the task is provided. Now, we explain the roles and responsibilities of the learners, trainers, and any other participants. Encourage the learners to be engaged, and describe what a successful session would look like. It is very helpful to provide a connection between the lesson and the real world. We can explain where the skills and knowledge will be used in the process plant. We can connect the lesson to a past industrial accident. We can explain that we need to do this before we get to do something really cool and interesting. We should tell them how they are going to learn, and hopefully every learning personality finds comfort among the methods. Trinidad and the Caribbean has always been multilingual. The common language may not be the first language of either the coach or the learner. Keep that in mind, along with the common sense in the slide. Small groups are good for discussion and encouraging quieter people to contribute. Sometimes allow people to make their own groups and choose a spokesperson. Alternatively, you can get participants to write on post-it notes and stick them on the board, then gather around to read, discuss, categorize, etc. This board is often called a parking lot in corporate training. If nobody learned, the instructor did not teach. And that's the truth, Ruth. You shouldn't have to give a test at the end of the lesson to find out if people learned. You'll know long before then. Just keep watching their facial expressions. Ask questions like, "Do you understand?" and "How would you summarize what we have just covered?" and watch the facial expressions. Actively encourage discussion, and summarize occasionally. Summarize occasionally to remind the learner what was just completed. Test the learner's knowledge of the stage with open questions. And remind the learner what the next stage is. Doing is the most effective way of learning. Learners should be given the chance to practice on their own after you've shown them. Use another shorter session for the learner to demonstrate the learning and ask further questions. Instructors use video to show situations that cannot be simulated in the classroom. But be aware that video is a passive medium. Most times it is better to watch short sequences of video, stop, and discuss. For group discussions, start by asking very general, simple, open questions like, "What do you think about that?" Ask the talkative people first to get the discussion going. Ask people you know that know the subject. Don't be afraid of silence, wait for an answer. If you are struggling to get responses, as the last resort, ask them what is the matter. If you lose your way in a lesson, don't panic. Be aware of your body language. Apologize, but not too much. Call a break, take your time. And get organized. Recall the group when you're ready. If you don't have the answer to a question, don't panic. If you don't have the answer to a question, don't panic. Ask the rest of the group. You should have been doing that even when you know the answer. Use the notice board or parking lot to postpone the issue and track down the answer later. And for higher levels, you can share how you found the answer with the students and empower them. If you realize you don't have enough time to complete the lesson, don't panic. Be aware of your body language. Pause and plan. Remove something. Do not increase the pace. Share the problem with the group. Discuss, suggest, or agree a solution. Perhaps you can drop a topic they already know about. There are no unhelpful people, there is only unhelpful behavior. Listen carefully to the speakers. Extract the gold nuggets. Interrupt when something good is said and put some focus on it. You can interrupt to summarize too. You can ask people firmly, but politely, where are we heading? Engagement is the trainer's best friend, he should be conscious of who is, and is not, contributing. Interrupt the enthusiast, and insist that someone else speaks first. But don't forget to come back to the enthusiast. When giving feedback to learners, trainers should avoid sarcasm and personalized criticism. Aggressive body language and/or tone of voice from trainers is unacceptable. Allow the learner to speak during feedback. The trainer's job is to help the learner understand. Do not embarrass the learner by taking over a practical demonstration. That should only be used for safety violations. Stick to the issues when giving feedback, do not make comments about the learner's personality. A positive approach to feedback is to get the learner to identify the mistake. Focus on the reason for avoiding the error. Get the learner to fix the error. When giving learners praise, be specific. Tell the learner precisely what they have done well. Give the praise immediately. A good attitude is for the trainer to try to catch the learner doing something right. At the end of the session, go back to the objectives and program outlined at the beginning and briefly pull together everything covered. Ask for and answer final questions. And encourage all participants to think about what they will do as a result of what they have learned. The action the session produces depends on how well you defined the objectives, designed the structure, and delivered the contents. Take every opportunity during the session to talk about the participants applying what they are learning back in the workplace. Get participants to note the actions they say they will take, and later find out how they did. Coaching is a partnership between coach and client. Coaches help clients to define and achieve their goals and objectives. The ultimate aim of coaching is to help people develop and improve performance. When assessing the learning delivery of another trainer, consider if he was clear, if he got the sequence right, if he was rushing, if he watched the group, if he reassured them, and if he gave the students reasons for the learning. When a trainer is assessing his own training, he should consider, did the timings work out? Was the structure correct? Were the different activities used effective? What went particularly well? What should be changed for next time? Formative assessments are used to monitor student learning to provide ongoing feedback that can be used by instructors to improve their teaching and by students to improve their learning. More specifically, formative assessments help students identify their strengths and weaknesses and target areas that need work. There is no grade awarded.